It's a challenging time to be a teacher. We don't get paid a lot, the days can be long and exhausting, demands from students, parents, admins, and districts can be intense. There's always room for improvement and there is always more to do. There are always new procedures to learn, new programs to run, new strategies to master. But it's when our fire burns the lowest that we remember our purpose. We teach because we're resilient. We teach because we're problem solvers. We teach because investing in kids is one of the highest callings we can imagine. We teach because we know that the classroom can be a place of magic and possibility. We teach because we have an unquenchable fire for learning and a passion to share it. We teach because our colleagues are some of the best human beings we will ever meet. We teach because we have an opportunity to influence the global citizens that will make this world a better place. If you're still on fire for learning and growth, join the Teachers on Fire Roundtable for conversations that will warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your practice. You'll hear from real people and real educators with real solutions, not make-believe perfection, but ideas, inspiration, and a path toward change and transformation in K-12 education today. My name is Tim Cavey. I'm an 8th grade teacher, assistant principal, and the host of the Teachers on Fire podcast. I'm inviting you to join us at the Teachers on Fire Roundtable. Because you matter, your voice is important, and we are all better together. Good morning, Teachers on Fire, and welcome back to another edition of the Teachers on Fire Roundtable, conversations that will warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your professional practice. I'm so excited to be joined today by Lainie, Rowell, and Sean Gaillard, and they were the leaders of, how can I describe it? Something that really was a first, I would say, through my summer. It was a form of professional learning that really engaged and connected and ignited a lot of great conversations like this one. And I can't wait to dig into it with them here in a moment. First, before we get into that, I want to say hi to all of our viewers. Please say hello. Let us know where you are joining from. We've already got Tim Belmont showing up on YouTube. Good morning, Tim. Livia is here from Burnaby. Yay, Livia. We've got Manuel Brent from Twitter. And Livia also says, good morning, Tim, Lainie, and Sean. So amazing to see you this morning. Well, Livia, that's a sacrifice because I know you are getting up early for this. So thank you so much for joining us. All right. So over to my guests. Tell us who you are and what your current context in education looks like. And then we will get into Campfire Convos EDU. But Lainie, first over to you. And Lainie, I think you may be muted somehow. Yeah. Take two.
Oh my goodness. That's
no
fine.
Worries.
That's my intro. Still learning the mute button. Sorry about that. I have kids and I was just trying to make sure they weren't disturbing us earlier. So hi everyone, I'm Lainie. I actually do know how to use the mute button. I'll figure it out. So I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having us, Tim. I'm really honored. Oh, look at that. Really honored to share this space with both of you. So quickly, I'm an evolving learner. I'm an author, podcaster, obviously educator, that's the best part, and experienced classroom teacher and district leader. So that's who I am.
Well, thank you for joining us, Lainie and Sean.
Well, good morning to all, and Tim, it's great to be here with my bandmate Lainie. I'm excited to cut a record here, and I got to say, Olivia mentioned this in the chat, but your intro to this gig is so inspiring. It really is. And I may have to borrow it for my opening faculty meeting because it really does get to the heart of your great work and what you do to uplift educators all over the world. So it's just an honor to be a small part of this. So I am a practicing elementary school principal in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I'm the proud principal of Moore Magnet Elementary School. I am the author of The Pepper Effect. I do a podcast called Principal Liner Notes podcast. I spend a lot of time in record stores, and I also spend a lot of time in bookstores. And I'm a big fan of this particular book, Evolving Learner. I don't know how this ended up, but Lainie co-wrote this masterpiece, and then this just landed on my front doorstep minutes ago, and I know that there are several people who contributed to this book. One of them being here, and that is because of a teacher, which this is a masterpiece, and I can't wait to dive into this and to read Lainie's words and so many other folks' words. All thanks to George Couros, Lauren Kaufman, Livia. I mean, the list goes on. So I'm really excited.
So can you see why I want to collaborate with this man? He's so generous. He's so generous. And of course, I am a huge fan of his book as well. I'm regretting not buying the physical copy of it because I have the Kindle version. So The Pepper Effect, you all need to check it out.
We are going to get back into those books in a few minutes. But first of all, I want to talk about the Campfire Convos, Lainie and Sean, because as I said in the intro, this was something sort of new. This was a new project, new idea. How did they come about? Where did this concept come from? We'll talk more about what it looked like in a moment. But Lainie, where did this come from?
Me wanting to work with Sean. So it was... I had reached out to Sean wanting to collaborate with him. We had zero idea what this would look like. Sean can talk more about what it ended up looking like, but it was really me. That's how I learn. I connect with others. Tim, I'm so grateful to be connected with you too. And it was just kind of this very organic, we want the learning to continue over the summer for ourselves, and we want to bring others in. How can we do it without stressing people out and making people feel like this is another thing to do? So as we were bringing this idea together, it was always through the lens of how can we learn and grow together in a very no stress environment. I don't know if I captured that well, Sean, but that was my thought.
Well, he'll have an opportunity to add to that here because, Sean, I also want to talk for a moment about, actually, I'm going to skip ahead in my questions and ask you, first of all, how did they happen, physically or I guess digitally? What is VOXER? And talk about the VOXER environment for a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. VOXER, I guess the metaphor that is often used for VOXER, and even VOXER itself uses, it's a walkie-talkie app. And so imagine, a walkie-talkie on your phone or on your computer, in which you get to kind of share audio recordings or text messages with either one-on-one or with a group as large or as small as you want it to be. It's a great vehicle for asynchronous learning. And Lainie, when we did the Campfire Convos, that was kind of where our collaboration landed. I was so grateful that her masterpiece and what she brings to the table, she reached out, and we haven't looked back since.
I think of VOXER as sort of audio Twitter. It's just a stream of voice memos, and then you do have some text messages as well. And we sort of have a love-hate relationship with VOXER, right? Because it's kind of an annoying app in many ways, but it does the job because it sort of orients us toward audio, asynchronous audio. So let's talk about the experience. I mean, wow. I got hit that Monday morning or whatever that first day was, and I'd never seen messages like that in my VOXER app before. Talk about these, I believe it was 4 weeks of Campfire Convos. Lainie, what are you taking away?
Oh, it's so hard to just pick one thing to take away from. First of all, it's totally inspiring. I think we had about 80 some odd people join the VOXER group, and it was just, for me, it was constant inspiration. When I needed a pick me up, when I needed to feel connected, I would just jump into VOXER and listen to some of the messages. And yes, we had a little bit of text in there too, or I'd read some messages. But there's something about that. We all came together around the fire when we could. The asynchronous piece was huge for me. I don't want to speak for Sean, but I think that was kind of the game changer. That it wasn't okay, let's all meet up at 4 p.m. Pacific, that's just not always going to work, especially in the summer. So the asynchronous part of it, I could be on vacation with my family, I could be out for a walk, I could be at the gym, I have an idea, I just pop in and share it. that incredible flexibility to learn and share, I think for me was one of the biggest, like, oh, wow, this is very different.
Yeah, you guys were both very generous about just stressing over and over again. This is sort of come to the fire when you're able to, when you want to. You know, everybody's got sort of different bandwidth and availability. And I know, Sean, you were extremely busy all through this. Lainie, I'm sure you were as well. Sean, I'll put you on the spot a little bit. Can you tell us about some of the topics that we covered in the Campfire Convos?
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. The Campfire Convo, again, was meant to really honor teacher voice, and for those educators that may, you know, there were some deep topics that we hit upon, so we wanted to provide folks an open invitation to talk about things such as well-being, which I think that was probably our first topic one week. Then we talked about the notion of what worked this past year. You know, we're coming over and under, depending on where you're coming from, you know, the year to end all school years, whether you were hybrid, whether you were remote, whether you were virtual, whether you were in a mask or not in a mask. I mean, all educators, all of us in this world this last school year were impacted. And, you know, I don't even know if you want to call it a paradigm shift. So we really, it would be very easy to talk about, my gosh, you know, social distancing was hard. Wearing the masks was hard. My kids weren't with me, but one of the topics we talked about was what worked this past year. What were things that went well, and how are you going to maybe take some of those elements that worked this past school year and apply it to your schoolhouse in the upcoming school year. So those, that, you know, just kind of broad topics that we felt were meaningful enough and open enough that anyone could take any direction with it. And in many cases, our expectations, Lainie and our expectations were totally blown away. We didn't think that, you know, in a good way, that the conversation would go the way that we thought. And that had everything to do with the folks gathered around the campfire, sharing their gifts, sharing their talents. There was no hierarchy. There was no, okay, I'm a principal and Lainie's this award-winning international global consultant. You know, we didn't play to that, you know. And so we really wanted the teacher voice, the educator voice, to drive the conversation. And in many ways, which was also cool, was that you know, that led to us kind of curating and pulling together, you know, ideas and doing some things to respond to the group, and we were very committed to that, responding to the needs of the folks that committed to some involvement in the campfire.
There was no hierarchy around the campfire, and so it should be. It was just really, really rich and inspiring. Yeah. Just before we move on, Lainie, is there anything that you would change, do you feel like, if you ran this again in the future? Is there, I guess, are there any lessons that others who want to set up similar asynchronous professional learning conversations in the summer can take away from this experience?
Well, I mean, we really did try to make it as low stress as possible. And I really have been constantly reflecting on this, and Sean knows this as well, and you mentioned it, Tim, is that, you know, we didn't want people to feel bad if they could only jump in maybe one day that week, or maybe one day the entire series. We really didn't want that to happen. And I think maybe it's just the nature of educators and how giving they are, that they did feel bad when they weren't. You know, that was kind of a comment that I got a few times. Like, I feel bad, I haven't been in. Like, no. We said come for a day, come, you know, one time, come never again. It's totally up to you. So I still haven't figured out how to change how much teachers want to help. I mean, obviously I don't want to, I'm joking there, but it's just like teachers are such givers. That was the only thing, is I never wanted, I know Sean didn't want this either, we never wanted anyone to feel guilty. And just one thing we haven't really mentioned yet, we did have this element of camp counselors, and that was, you know, that was the intention behind that was, you know, we want to make sure that everyone feels seen and heard. And so, you know, with depending on how big the group is, Sean and I might not be able to manage that. Can we bring in some camp counselors to, you know, enrich the conversation, but also make sure others feel included? And, you know, Tim, you were a camp counselor. You were one, you know, it was really fun you were one we actually reached out to and said, would you be a camp counselor? Some of our camp counselors volunteered once they saw what we were doing, and that was really special too. But yeah, it's just, we don't want you to feel bad when you can't be there all the time. That was the only thing I would try and change. So.
Well, an ongoing conversation I have with myself is, are educators more rule followers and people pleasers, or rebels and rule breakers? And I think maybe there's a bit of both in a lot of us. And I think that rule keeper or people pleaser side of us, we open up the app each morning and we want to listen to every single message. And sometimes that's difficult. So there's a little bit of a wrestling match that has to happen there, but that's okay. That's part of VOXER. Well, Lainie, you wrote in The Evolving Learner about the importance of learning from peers and the broader education community. So yeah, there we go. Sean's got the book. So my question for you is this: for teachers who are interested in learning, I want to speak to that teacher who's hearing about these Campfire Convos, these amazing asynchronous conversations that happen throughout July. And, they want to get a little bit more connected. They want to engage in those inspiring conversations. Where would you suggest they start if they're not very connected right now? Maybe they don't have a lot of connections outside of the building. What are the first steps they can think about?
Well, one of the things that you, in your intro, which we all just absolutely love, your amazing intro, I wrote it down, some of the best people you'll ever know, right? Your peers. And so we're so blessed to be often in a building with amazing people. We obviously have these great educators we work with physically, but then to be able to connect with the broader, like Tim and Sean, I wouldn't know you if I hadn't taken the risk to put myself out there through social media, through putting content out there. So I think we have to just kind of, it can be difficult at first. I'm not going to say it's easy for everyone, but for me, it's been social media. I sometimes get pushback from teachers saying, social media, there's so much garbage out there. And there is a fair amount of stuff that I am not happy to see, but I'm also pretty good at not seeing it because of the way that I follow people who lift others up and share good things. And so I've kind of cultivated, I've kind of cultivated this professional learning or personal learning network, but I would also say professional learning family, these people who I can constantly learn from. But I don't think it has to be social media. That was the answer for me. But I do think, when you go to conferences, take that chance, sit next to someone. Shannon, so nice to see so many people here. I think that we can join professional organizations, maybe that have a focus that we're particularly interested in. I think there's so many ways to connect. So for me, it's social media, but that's not the only way to do it. There's so many amazing educators out there. And I would also say, you said the word aspire, Tim. I would say connect with the people who you aspire to be like. And that's why I'm connected to the two of you, is I want to take that greatness from you and try and, show that myself. So.
Well put, Lainie. I couldn't say it any better. Tisha over on Facebook says, connecting on social media has changed my life as an educator. I wouldn't have met all of you if it wasn't for Twitter. Livia says, I didn't know I needed a PLN until I found one. Now I don't want to live without one. I think that speaks well for a lot of us. And Mel is here. She says, yay, Livia Chan. I've loved being able to connect with you. And Shannon is here on YouTube as well. Oh, Lainie, you are so great. So the Lainie praises continue.
Oh, yeah.
Sean, as I make my way through the pepper effect, I gain added appreciation for the ways that you invoke metaphor and story. And Lainie, back me up on this. I mean, Sean loves the metaphors, right? He's metaphor rich. So Sean, can you say more about why you think metaphor and image and narrative, why are these so important? Especially speak to those leaders, maybe leaders who are leading without a title or building leaders. Why is metaphor and narrative so important on the journey?
Well, and thanks for the pepper effect nod, man. I dig that and I appreciate that. So, and man, there's just, I know I want to answer a question, but there's just, this is like a family reunion right now, because I see like Tisha, Richmond, one of our camp counselors, Livia, of course, Liz Bostwick, who is just an amazing person and an educator. So this is really, really cool. But I think part of the metaphor gig comes from my background as a high school English teacher. I have a great appreciation and love for language and expression and communication. And I really believe that, we're all connected as a humanity through story. And the more that I can find an entry point or a hook or some sort of common ground with someone through metaphor, through a reference, through an allusion or whatever, that sometimes, I think sometimes empowers more communication, more understanding, more empathy. As a leader, I think that's important as well. With our gig as educators and teachers, we're constantly, communicating and knee deep in some sort of policy or acronym or procedure or protocol. And yeah, there is a time and place to say, wear your face mask, wear your face mask because it's safe, and that is what we have to do. But sometimes there's a time and place as well, to say to wear your face mask in a way that's empowering, inspiring, and that folks may not understand the reason or may not agree with the why. But if you can convey that in a way that is appealing, inspiring, and accessible, the better. So I'm a firm believer in story, and some of our great leaders, Abraham Lincoln, use story a lot to express deeper truths and meanings, during a difficult time, very challenging time in America's history. So I believe in storytelling in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I have to tell you, I don't have a rich and long connection with the Beatles, but they're growing on me. You're starting to tell that story. I'm starting to come on board. Well, the three of us share an affinity for the symbol of fire. And actually, full disclosure, when I was launching roundtables last year, I actually considered calling these campfires. So we love this fire metaphor, which leads me to ask, what stands between teaching on fire and burnout? Big question, right? And particularly in these times. Sean, I'll go back to you on this one. What's the difference, and how can teachers stay away from burnout, stay on fire?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's important that we understand the beauty and artistry and rigor of our gig as educators. And if we can convey passion and excitement and energy in whatever role that you have, it helps make the world a better place. But also, and this goes back to one of the topics that we talked about in Campfire Convos about taking care of your well-being. We are so willing as educators to empty our buckets and empty our glasses and do what we can for others, but we often forget about our own needs and our own nervous system, if you will. Sometimes our nervous systems get lost in the translation. So balance the fire, balance the passion, and know that you are doing good work, but also you've got to take care of you have to be intentional to do that. And then we must also, just as we're aware of fulfilling the needs of the students that we get to serve, or the teachers that we get to serve, or the families we get to serve, it is crucial that we're also in tune with each other. Whether it's in your PLN, I have folks that I just kind of check in with, or they check in on me, and that is just so important, that we're intentional and relentless about that, just as we are in terms of keeping that fire going in the classroom or in the schoolhouse.
Lainie, what would you add, the difference between burnout and teaching on fire?
I've spent a lot of the last year and year and a half thinking about gratitude. And this might seem like an odd direction to go with this, but I actually think that one of the ways to keep from burning out is not to expect gratitude necessarily, but to actually practice gratitude.
Right on.
And so I think that's can be a real game changer. And especially maybe if you're in an environment where there's a lot of people feeling down or not appreciated, be the one to start the gratitude movement, because I find that gratitude is contagious. So when we went into this crazy cuckoo bananas time, as I like to call it, That was one of the things I did with my kids at home is we did gratitude practice. What can we be thankful for? And we have a gratitude jar. And when we have a tough day, we pull out we dump out the gratitude jar and start reading. And so, leaving a note on your teacher next door's desk, I really appreciated that you did this. That made my day, or something like that. Just these small little acts of gratitude. Acknowledging the people on your campus who don't typically get a lot of gratitude, the custodian, your front office manager, the people who are doing so many wonderful things on your campus. So for me, I think that can help us keep from burning out, be the one that starts that gratitude.
Love the advice about gratitude. I just want to touch on Tim's comment here. I think it's so good. He says, remember to keep your fire lit on your terms, not someone else's. And that might grate because it feels selfish, right? Yeah. To a lot of teachers who sort of wrestle with a bit of a martyr complex almost. So there's a bit of a shift that takes place there. But I think if we can really lean into what sets us on fire, lean into our passions, that's going to just give us that much more to give to our learners and to our colleagues. Well, we are starting to wind this down. I'm interested as a reader, as a lifelong learner, and I know the two of you definitely model that as well. Who are you reading? Who are you listening to? Who is inspiring you right now? That's my next question for you. Lainie, I'll go back to you on this one. Who are the education authors and voices who are influencing your thinking and learning?
Well, obviously both of you, and Tim, your, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the title, but The Comeback, your article that you wrote at the beginning of summer. And so that was a huge inspiration. Remember, Sean, that was part of us, we're like, okay, this is the first resource that we're going to include for this week, And so, Tim, will you remind us the title of it? Because I'm butchering it, but I know
Cue the Comeback. Yeah.
Thank you. Cue the Comeback. So that was really, really helpful.
Thank you.
There's so many prolific. Obviously, Sean, I got a chance to read his book earlier this year. That was a huge inspiration. And I mean, you're both so prolific. I'm obviously going to give a shout out to my co-host of Lemonade Learning, Brianna Hodges. She's a constant inspiration. We were talking about story earlier. Gosh, is she a good storyteller? George Couros, and Because of a Teacher, talk about gratitude practices, him leading that charge, thank you, Sean. I love that you have that. I'm jealous that you have it because mine hasn't come yet. But, I also want to give a huge shout out to Katie Novak. When we went into this crazy time last year, that was actually when Evolving Learner came out, literally March 13th of 2020. And I reached out to her and I said, hey, would you be interested in reading this book? Yes, there they both are. And she not only read it, she reached back out to me and she's like, I loved it. Let's collaborate on something. You want to write together? What do you want to do? And she honestly, Sean, she is who gave me the courage to reach out to you because she is the one who kind of started me in this, just reach out to people. So, I've gotten a chance to write with Lauren Kaufman and Stephanie Rothstein and Mike Lawrence. And these are all people that, again, I aspire to be like because they all have pieces that I think are just amazing. And so I think that would just be my thing. I know I'm probably talking way longer about this than you wanted, but I'm just finding this last year and a half to have been really amazing in that I'm reaching out to people and collaborating with them in a way that I didn't have the courage to do before. So, and Tisha, you're on that list too. Livia, obviously. I mean, I'm going to start leaving a lot of people out, but there's just so many people. So many people.
Great list. You mentioned Katie Novak. I was listening to George and AJ yesterday on George's podcast, and George was saying Katie and AJ are having a competition who can write more books. So there you go. There's Katie's next book. Sean, what's on your book stand? You've shown us a lot of books, so you're obviously a reader. Can you share with us what you're into right now?
Well, totally into the work of Lainie and our collaboration. Seriously, she and the Lemonade Learning podcast, which she and Brianna Hodges are doing, is just phenomenal and refreshing. So I am very grateful for Lainie, and anytime that I can, I'll share it. I'll do it. There it is, right there. I would also say as well, and I have to thank Lauren Kaufman, who's also Because of a Teacher, and a recently anointed assistant principal. in her area of Long Island. But she turned me on, and actually, she's also because of a teacher. I'm not getting anything for all these plugs, by the way, but Dr. Mary Hemphill I have been really reading and enjoying her book, The 1 Minute Meeting. And that book is all about empowering, how you can empower student voice to transform your school culture. So I'm greatly appreciating that work. The work of Liz Bostwick. I'm a big fan of her blog and her book, Take the Leap, with innovation. But again, it's just all these moments that I'm able to kind of gather for meaning and connection through my PLN. That I'm grateful for. So any bit of learning, Tisha Richmond, her book and her work is innovative and upbeat and energizing. There it is on the Kindle. So those pieces, and of course the standbys for me. Todd Whitaker, he transformed my leadership. What great principals do differently, what great teachers do differently, and I'm inspired by him all the time, and I revisit his work quite a bit. There's a lot of work out there right now on equity and what it means to be an equity-centered leader through the Wallace Foundation, and I'm getting great inspiration for that as well. But it's just great to be part of the band and to learn different gigs and learn different ways to play music for kids from the great educators and inspire. Yeah, like Lainie, I don't want to. I mean, I could probably list 50, but I don't want to leave someone out and do that.
Well, I'm with Livia. I could listen to what you're reading every week. I mean, that could be a weekly question on the different social media. I would always be interested, and I just gain a lot from just knowing what other educators are learning from. Well, what is next for the two of you? I know you're both so engaged, you're so active, you're both leading in your spaces. Lainie, what is the next project or pursuit that is lighting your fire right now?
Oh, wow. I think one of the things that I've been really happy with is just being open to new ideas. And so it's funny, if you had asked me, 2 months ago, we didn't even have Campfire Convos EDU conceived yet, right, Sean? So I think one of the things that is on my horizon is to just be open to the new opportunities, the new collaborations, and just to keep learning and sharing. That's a really big deal to me. I continued the podcast. Honestly, it took me forever to write Evolving Learner. And for the last 3 years of that 7-year journey, I had Christy and Lauren. Oh, nice. Thank you. But I have become a much more efficient writer. And I have been writing a lot for Edutopia. I've got actually another article about gratitude coming out there in the near future. And then more Sean, anything I can do to collaborate with that genius. Tim, I think I've been on your show a few times, so I don't know that you'll ever have me back, but whatever space we can collaborate on, I would absolutely love that. So just want to keep working with amazing people like the two of you.
Lainie, we're sort of ahead of schedule, so I just want to park on the writing piece for just a moment. You're obviously well established you've got the Edutopia pipeline going. You're just pumping out pieces there. You've written these books. Sean, you're a writer as well. But first to Lainie, can you tell us a little bit about what insights would you offer to educators who do want to do more writing, either in blog form, book form? What does your process look like? Are you a 5 a.m. writer? Tell us more about that, if you don't mind.
So this will be a little embarrassing because I don't feel like I have a good habit of writing. So okay. I would say that for a lot of people, good habits for writing are important. And so, speaking of George, I've asked him about this a number of times. He will, he gives himself deadlines, not for when to write, but when to publish. I will get this out by 4 p.m. on Tuesday. That's his deadline. And he just has really good habits to hit that. Rochelle Dene Poth, one of the most prolific writers I know. Yes. She is really efficient in capturing ideas. She'll be on a walk and she'll do dictation or record herself. So for me, I try, and when I get that idea, if I can, I will sit down and start writing it. In fact, some of the articles that have been most well received were I woke up at 6 a.m. and this will sound ridiculous, but on my iPad just typed out the article and like sent it off, and that ended up being like one of the more well received. Actually, that happened twice. But I think that if you have that idea, just don't lose it. If you can't stop everything and write it here, I mean, set a reminder, put a note somewhere. I will say for me, I do like to block out time on my calendar if I have something that needs to be done. And so I'm kind of a little different approach than George, where he's like, this is my published date, it'll just happen by then. I try to carve out time and make it sacred. Don't move this kind of time. But sometimes if the inspiration comes, I'm going to try and do it. But I'm not as consistent as some other people. So and you're the one that should be answering this question.
Oh, no, not at all. I definitely want to be more consistent like the two of you. And I love that advice about striking while the iron's hot. And I also heard there, collect those ideas. Dave Burgess writes about that as well. When an idea comes, you've got to write it down, hang on to it, write a few notes, and then come back to it as soon as you can. I don't want to lose sight of my original question here, which is what is next for you? So Sean, can you tell us about a project or pursuit right now that is lighting your fire?
Well, as I often say, wherever Lainie goes, I will follow, and we don't know where we're going. I know, but we do know that we are going to continue to collaborate in some way, shape, or form. I hope to write something with Lainie at some point down the line, and so I think after we get off this, we're going to just kind of connect and reunite and see where we go next. So I'm really excited about this particular collaboration, and I value it so much. There is, I won't get into all of the details, but there is another book that is coming, and I'm excited about where it's going to head and where the direction I'm going to take. It won't be necessarily the Pepper Effect 2.0. But it'll take kind of a left turn. So I hope to make perhaps a year from now be back and hopefully talk a little bit more about the book and maybe even have the book in hand. We'll see. I also have a school to get ready to open. So my principal gig, I'm in the process of building a new administrative team. My past administrative team, they were so great at what they do, and I'm grateful to have been a mentor and coach to them, that they all got promoted. So I am looking for another assistant principal and instructional facilitator. And I'm also going to be writing for the next in the 100 No Nonsense series. I'll be contributing a chapter for 100 No Nonsense things administrators should stop doing. So that'll be coming out. I continue to write music. So I write exclusively for Culture Sonar, and I write things that are not education related, but my other passion with music. And I continue to do the podcast. And speaking of courage, I mean, Lainie gave me the courage to have guests on. So I had Naomi Tolan as our first guest, and reached out to her, and then I reached out to Lainie, and it was real honored to have her on the Principal Liner Notes podcast. So I'm looking to get some guests on and to talk about the intersections between music, leadership, culture, and wherever else we intersect. So I just looking for bandmates and looking to do what we can to help change the world for the kids that we get to serve.
Speaking of bandmates and writers, I would be remiss if I didn't mention our great friend Livia Chan, who really took the opportunity during the Campfire Convos to do that curation and documentation and archival, which is all so helpful. So make sure you're checking out Livia Chan's blog, and I know she is overseeing some bloggers at Teach Better. So Livia, we are big fans of your work as well. Wanted to get that in there. Well, as we close, Lainie and Sean, tell us how we can connect with you. I know we've talked a little bit about where you can be found, but again, for those not familiar with your work, cover all the platforms. Tell us how we can connect. Lainie.
So I am at Lainie Rowell almost across the web. So Twitter, Insta, and LinkedIn. So LAINIE, and then Rowell like Powell, ROWELL. And I just love connecting with people. So I do hope people will reach out on whatever platform they're comfortable with. I am on Facebook. My Facebook is definitely more just like, family pics, but but I do really, really spend a lot of time on Twitter and Instagram, just learning and sharing. So I hope people will reach out.
Okay, and since I want to come back to that comment, but since Lainie is not really pumping it up here, I'll say make sure to catch her at the Lemonade Learning Podcast.
Yes.
And make sure to pick up a copy of her book, The Evolving Learner. So there we go. I know we mentioned them, but we got to do that right. Sean, over to you. How can we connect with you?
I would say SM Gaillard on Twitter. That's usually where I hang out. My podcast is the Principal Liner Notes Podcast, and you can grab that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. The book is The Pepper Effect. I would be honored to read for you to read that. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Like Lainie, it's mostly what family picks or then what record I'm listening to. And then also, always open to collaborate for anybody. Always open to jam with anybody. So. Grateful for that as any connection. So, and then of course wherever Lainie is, I'm not far behind. At the campfire, we're there. We got the lemonade. We're waiting for you. We're waiting for you. Come on by.
Well, it was such a remarkable idea, and it was so successful. And I know that for educators in that group, some were not as connected and into the social media platforms as the three of us are. And I really just sensed that it meant a lot to them. The Campfire Convos meant a lot. It was that burst of encouragement that they needed. I was connected with people I'd never connected with before, people like Aggie, who I'm just excited to now be connected with online. I was hoping to see her here this morning, but it probably didn't work out for her. As we wrap up here, I do want to say again, a big thank you to Livia on YouTube, Tisha on Facebook, Jillian on Facebook. Didn't see Jillian show up. That's awesome. Liz Bostwick and so many others. Tim Belmont on YouTube, Shannon on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us for this extension of the Campfire Convos EDU. Lainie and Sean, thank you for all that you do. Thank you for your encouragement, your support. You just volunteered this time this summer. And I have to say, too, like there were no plugs. There was no end game, no funnel, no call to action. It was just simply goodwill. And I really, really appreciated that. So to both of you, take care. Have a wonderful school year. And I know we will connect again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Lainie.
Thanks, John.